Hey guys, it's John, and I was thinking a little bit about education again, not in an intentional way, but just sort of came up in how I was doing some work today, and it's something that I have realized a lot lately, especially as I've just been talking with more investor groups and referencing some of the precedential case text that really defines our markets. A lot of which or a subset of which, because there is certainly so much, but there's a, I think there's a pretty defined list of generally known legal precedents, um, and most of those are in the bibliography of the yellow paper on GitHub. Now, I'll clarify that the bibliography, and I might completely be missing things here and just being self gratis, the word when you just, but I think that a lot of the work is in the bibliography, or at least most of the work that was influential to me, and that there's a fair way to put it. Most of the work that was influential in the early days, learning about the markets and understanding the material challenges that were popularized by Trimbath are in the bibliography citation file of the yellow paper on GitHub. Now, all of those items don't get referenced in the yellow paper, so you only see a subset of them. It actually started off as the bibliography for my thesis on decentralized order books, and that's at wooten.link/thesis. And then I just copied it over because the yellow paper sort of started as a thesis, and I had to copy over the text images of the way that the trades get routed because that was a lot of work to make. And it was all research that I'd done on my own because there still basically is nobody that really documents exactly what a fill process looks like, and it's just this extreme collection of public materials that you have to put together to explain um, how it is that stocks get traded, which is unbelievable. It's so stupid. Like, to think that the vast majority of the public documentation doesn't explain what happens when you press the buy button is it's just silly. And the reason, well, I mean, I don't know, because it's so complicated, and that's stupid. It's just unbelievably dumb. I remember in a congressional session a while back, I tweeted about it. One of the participants, what I tweeted about was them saying that the system in the past was inefficient and prone to manual human error. And my remark on it was that if that was the case, then what was trade 385? It seems like it still is the damn case. But one of the other remarks at that hearing was that if someone was to rebuild markets from the ground up today, they would not use the current system. And this is someone that was well established, Wall Street, big shot, all the, everything you'd expect. And they explicitly say that the existing system is just plain bad. But we're trapped in it. Well, I don't think we're trapped in it. I think if something is legitimately bad, well, guess what? That's public policy. Okay? The American public identifies a flaw in the system. Well, guess what? It's a 51% vote. There's like electoral, there's the other things of democracy, but we can really rectify these challenges as soon as everyone sort of understands and comes to terms with the reality at stake. And in order to get people to that point, I think one of the really important things, as we've documented, is these primary sources. And I really like quotes. When I was in high school, I would drive over half an hour back and forth each way, uh, to school every day, and I would always listen to podcasts. Business, personal finance, development, all the things that for self growth, and I'd watch tons of YouTube videos, read tons of books, as you can see on the channel. And one thing for books, okay, you want to take something that was really important to me was quoting the educators that I learned from. It was really cool to think that you could read a whole book and sort of get 6 or 7 quotes from those hundreds of pages that encapsulate the main ideas and the primary messages that you want to get across that are personal to your interpretation of the work. And then if you want to use those in your own work, you can use the quotes, and then you can add your thoughts on top of that and use it as a basis for stimulating your own thought process. Because at the end of the day, nobody's born with a PhD. You get it by studying and building on top of that knowledge for 7 years. So that's sort of that's how knowledge works, right? Is you learn things and you build on top of it. You learn, you build on top. And the more that you can learn from, the more specialized, the higher quality, the better education becomes. And you can really specialize in something that you are truly passionate about, instead of having to go through a system that forces you into a couple pigeonholes because of their higher demand at one point in time that may not exist in another 10 years. And then it's like, well, crap, I got to start all over and I don't even like what I'm doing. Versus if you like what you're doing, hey, maybe you've got to try again, but you have a framework for the industry, you have an understanding of the sector, and you can do your own thing. Pursue your own passion with backing of others that really care about it. It just seems like a way to more efficiently arrange a society so that there's not a top-down guy telling you what you need to work on, and instead you can sort of just dictate exactly what you decide is the path forward. And there are real arguments against that. Oh, everyone just work at McDonald's and do nothing, or not work, but I think most people figure it out. I think most people care, and I really believe in people to make the best choices for themselves, and that should apply to their careers as much as it should apply to, I don't know, choices they make about an abortion. So, winding back down to the whole point here on quotes. Quotes, yes. So, written quotes from books, fine, sure, yeah. It's a book, it's writing. It's a good way to disseminate knowledge, or articles. It's a good way to, publish things, and you can reference in quality, and there's all these great things about referencing. But when it comes to podcasts or videos, and if you get a quote from that, which oftentimes, like so in the yellow paper, it opens up with a quote from Eric Townsend. That was from his podcast on Smarter Markets. It was years and years ago. I can't remember which episode. I have to kind of listen to them all again. Well, I mean, it's still going, but I don't know. I fell off a while back. I'm not like, but it's really interesting. There's just so much to do. Anyway, and I it would and I don't so. The idea is that if you take a quote from a live media, like a podcast or a video, well, now you have something really special, because words on paper don't capture emotion. They don't encompass the context, the ethos, or the passion of the speaker. And those can be extraordinarily important factors in conveying a message. I have another point to make, but let's just unpack that. The way that I do it is that I'll just write the quote, and then It depends on if it's like a regulatory document, then I'll do a footnote and I'll say, see, further instances of such XYZ available at the link to the content. But if it's something simple like a community post, you can just, when you do the quote person's name, you can just hyperlink the person's name. Or if you set it up with so and so said, you can hyperlink said. But I mean, if people know who the person is, then I don't know. I just think hyperlinking the person's name is pretty efficient. And then it links to the YouTube video at the time that it starts, or the podcast. I know Listen Notes, you can do it at the time that it starts, and that's pretty convenient. So it gives people not only an authoritative source to go and check that this is a real quote and you're not just spewing BS, but also that it gives them a chance to go and learn more. And that's really what's incredible here. Because while using a quote from a book, for instance, and then citing the book or saying so and so said in such and such book, well, that's not like super accessible. And I get it if you're doing like quotes for legal documents and you want to provide the reference source from there, or more stuff about it there. But book publishing, I don't know. It seems like a way to gatekeep information behind digital rights management, or only allowing dead tree versions of knowledge. And I really hope that we can all sort of figure out a better way to incentivize and compensate authors for good work. But when it's live content, when there's something that you can go back and refer to, now the reader has a path. They have an avenue to better themselves, to learn and to educate, because they can understand the full context of the perspective that you're conveying in the quote. And so that was something that I did. I had a book. I made this like mini quote book. It's like 45 pages long, and it was just these quotes I had from self-educators. And I'm in the process of open sourcing all that. And I think it's really really interesting, because now you can sort of do it all in one place, or you can give them a place to go and to learn more and to understand. And this contrasts starkly with the traditional means of, personal conversations, interviewing people, talking behind closed doors. Because anything that's not on YouTube, respectfully, is behind closed doors. Even if it's even if it's on YouTube and you have to pay a membership fee to access it, that's behind closed doors. And when we put quality public disclosures behind closed doors, I think it introduces really important social challenges. And this came to me when I realized that the quote I have on our GitHub right now from Jerry is from behind closed doors. It's not a public interview, and it was from talking to him. I would basically follow him every day after class, and we would chat on the way to. I had a skateboard, he had a bike. I just carried mine, obviously. And of course the half dozen calls that we've had so far, more than that, and personal, the two, there's other times too, but all these interactions, importantly, were not in the public light, not documented, and no one can really understand the full context and framework that went on in developing that understanding and interpretation that the pay of middlemen really should be minimized at all costs when it comes to systemically important financial market utilities. And that's just not good for expanding opportunities to the billions of people on the planet who want a better life, push for that better life, but by the nature of where they were born, will quite often have little opportunity for that better life. Unless we make a concerted, direct, and dedicated effort to decentralize the opportunities available across capitalism. So, that's why I think it's so crucial that if you do have those quotes that you can remember are from a specific person in an interview or something that they did, that you provide that opportunity to for the reader to go, if they want to explore more, to follow that rabbit hole and to go directly to the primary source. Because I don't like secondary sources when you use them as sort of the basis of an argument if it's not. I mean, it's the easy way out, right? It's faster to use secondary sources. But what I've found over the years is that you really can't develop your own perspective on things if you're not using primary sources, because you're not working with the raw material. There's always going to be a slight, you know, my glasses versus that guy's glasses. There's a tint to them that lean towards a specific author's um, incentives, their point of view on reality, their interests. And the only way to remove that is to have end production content that is produced by a large group of people, like a Wikipedia, where it's crowdsourced, where anybody can come in and make changes, and it's a collective effort, decentralized effort to produce the final, whatever you call them, book, proposal, policies, all these things. And but with primary sources, that's not a problem. It's not a problem because you are looking at exactly what happened, and you can interpret it for yourself and combine it with your own worldview, experiences, and objectives, so that it aligns with. I mean, you remember it better that way. Certainly, you're going to remember your own review of a book better than you would, somebody else's review of a book. So yeah, um, and I also do think that you get information across better in the live media with that emotion in the voice. Um, but you can write better sourced and cited content using written. So it's a give and take. Uh, but yeah, if we want opportunity to spread out of the G5, then the best way to do that is to try to keep as many conversations as possible in the public light. And this is why I just have this knotted, pitting, clawing feeling in my stomach every time I have a conversation through a video meeting with someone that I know would be incredibly valuable to the community, to others, or developing nations, that would give them immense public disclosure of material strategies in education that could be used by anyone for success. And yet the exchange is done without recording that meeting. It's done, there is a time and a place for private conversations, 100%. Like, if you're going to talk very intimately on a very specific subject that has tactical business implications, by all means, that should be private. But if you're going to talk high level about mission goals and strategy, and put out and discuss generalizable tactics for basic information that can be used by the world to better their positions in life, well, then that should be publicly disclosed, and it should be disclosed in mass and in full. It should be the full understanding, not some clipped up version of it. The clipped up versions of things and interviews that combine one person's interview with another person's interview with another person's interview to form a cohesive episode that's much shorter than the full context. While I appreciate the entertainment purposes availed by that system, I do not think it is the best way to educate and provide the full context necessary to completely analyze any given situation. I remember I have a couple of clips here from Masters of Scale, and they use this system where they, you know, will have like 1 hour interviews with four people and then combine it into one episode where they take little clips from each. It's very common. And I got the app and I only downloaded all the full interviews, and I listened to every single full interview over the course of a couple months, because for me there's no reason to hear someone else's tinted version of something. There's no need to hear their, I mean, unless it's the reporter or the person that I'm talking to. If it's the journalist and I care about that journalist and I want to hear their perspective, then yes, they're the primary source on themselves, obviously, and you're listening to their perspective based off of a ton of research they do. But if you want to get to the point where you can write that research yourself and lift yourself up into a position of knowledge, expertise, and application, then it's my view that you normally should understand the primary sources themselves, because you need to know the rules before you can break the rules. And that doesn't happen when you only listen to tidbits here and there and then people's commentary over it in rose-tinted glasses. It really only happens when you go through the grueling 5 hours of interviews that led to the 30 minutes of production, even if that's made public. Because interestingly, with Masters of Scale, a lot, if not a majority, of the shortened, abbreviated episodes are free on their podcast, but you have to pay to get the full interviews, just as a case in point of showing that the full interviews and the entire context in the long form is really the most valuable way if you to consume and to dive into very important topics, if you want to, if that's your goal and you want to get really 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 good at it. It's just like thinking, who's gonna become the rocket scientist? Is it the one that watches the astrophysics documentaries, or that opens up the textbook and goes in and looks at the full context? And that's a pretty bad example, but I don't know. That's kind of the gist of what I mean here. And the more that we can provide these source materials to the public, to anyone, without needing permission, then the easier it will be for a more just, equitable, and decentralized society to emerge. And that's exactly what we need. It's precisely what we can. It would have been a good quote. So it's precisely what we. It's exactly what we need. It's precisely what we need. Yeah, they're all the same words, aren't they? So that's my perspective on quotes, and it's why I think providing context, especially when you're writing, it's just a whole lot better. It would be awesome for me, looking back now, years later after writing the Yellow Paper, to listen again to that little clip from Townsend and hear the vocalities and inflection of his voice, because I remember it. I remember it quite vividly, but it's. I remember I was getting out of the elevator, walking into the apartment I was living at the time, and I heard him say this, and I just like dropped everything. I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is unbelievable! This is like the epitome of all the problems that we have here." And he was exactly right in the quote. It's unbelievable. So I got the phone and type. And it's been a huge inspiration, just that perspective and understanding it. And there's so many people that have been like that, which I've documented throughout many of the public posts and will continue to do so. I'd say they're all probably, they're all attributed, because attribution can happen when the source material is public, whereas if the source material is not public, and by public I mean permissionless, I mean that anybody can access it at any time without any permission. Don't need an account. Don't need to send an email. Don't need to provide cookies. It's just public. It's free, and it's permissionless. When you can reference in that manner, instead of having to reference a web archive link because you have to get through some paywall or some, things like that that happen a lot, that are inefficient. When you can reference the direct source, it just not only gives the reader an opportunity to learn, but that is a new user for the person that has put out that quality piece of something that you want to quote, and it makes it so that they grow faster too, because now they have a new follower, so to speak, and maybe they become a subscriber, maybe they become a true fan, and it's just a way to reward stellar work by providing a direct path of discovery for someone that otherwise, I mean, this was the whole concept. The original search concept of Google was just backlinks, if as I understand it, right? Is who's getting referenced the most. That's exactly how academic papers work. But there's a huge problem, which is that a lot of academic journals, you can't read the shit unless you're a professor, and it works fine if you only want to give opportunities to the top 1% that can afford the most expensive schooling, or even extremely expensive. Like, I mean, a couple $100 a year for these subscriptions. I mean, that's like 50 years of work for a lot of these families. It's ridiculous. And so the only solution is for it all to be permissionless, and that provides the methods whereby anyone that does really incredible work, like I said, they can grow organically, and it's definitely a slower process than the selling your book for $2,000 and pouring that back into advertising. But I ultimately think it's the most sustainable, most impactful, and most equitable form of education. A crucial human right.